The revelation that He Who Remains was the puppet master pulling the strings behind the TVA and maintaining the so-called sacred timeline took many by surprise. With a wonderfully charismatic performance by Jonathan Majors, He Who Remains made the most of his little screen time by being an overly eccentric Time Lord that captured the attention of audiences everywhere. But is there more to him than we were led to believe in the closing minutes of Loki? And did he in fact lie to Loki and Sylvie? Let's take a deeper look at this popularizing theory. During their interaction, He Who Remains is constantly able to avoid Sylvie's various attacks by knowing exactly what is about to happen before it happens. He attributes this to having seen everything throughout his lifetime, and having seen this exact scenario play out many times before. This is until they reach what he calls the threshold. It is not entirely clear what this threshold was, and many MCU fans, including ourselves, have theorized that this threshold was the rebirth of the Scarlet Witch at the end of WandaVision. For a more complete analysis of that theory, see our video on how He Who Remains senses the birth of the Scarlet Witch. But for this video, we will be exploring an alternative possibility. This threshold was signified by a rumble of thunder, but no other indication of anything abnormal was given. At this point, He Who Remains says that as of now, he has no idea what is going to happen, that he was only able to see everything until a certain point. But a few fans have poked holes in this explanation given by the character. Particularly, a Reddit user that goes by the name u-mambiolek noticed a curious detail in He Who Remains' final moments. He points out that during their interaction, he pushes a device that resembles and acts as a tempad to the end of the desk, which Sylvie would then swipe and use to push Loki back into the TVA, allowing her to kill He Who Remains. Is it possible that this small detail invalidates the rest of his story, seemingly confirming that he may have been lying this entire time? If he intentionally set the tempad in the ideal location for Sylvie to grab it, then he may have intentionally wanted her to kill him. In order to do this, she would need to send Loki back, and if this theory proves to hold weight, then he knew this all along. But what would his motivations be? He Who Remains wanted to protect the time stream from his evil variants known as Kangs, who are bent on interdimensional conquest, so why would he allow Sylvie to kill him and let the multiverse spiral into calamity? Because, my friends, the multiversal war that is about to happen has already happened, and he already knows how it ends. His final line before succumbing to his demise is, "See you soon." It is largely implied that he is not in fact referring to himself, but to his variants in the forms of Kangs, and that this haunting final line serves as a warning for the imminent arrival of these time-traveling tyrants. But is it possible that he's not only referring to him, but to the next iteration of He Who Remains who has yet to be born? In the same scene, he mentions that no matter how the interaction goes, he will always reappear right back at the same point. So is it possible that the multiverse needed to be broken open in order to complete a continuous time loop that the MCU has been stuck in since its inception? The sacred timeline may only be half of the predestined journey of the universe, and in order for the cycle to complete itself, the multiverse has to be opened up. The Kangs must wage a multiversal war until one is victorious, in which case the timeline will be reorganized into one sacred timeline by He Who Remains, in order to preserve the life that survives. And with the inevitable rebirth of the Scarlet Witch, the multiverse is destined to break open again. Thus, the cycle repeats itself over and over and over again. Is it possible that the first multiversal war that He Who Remains talks about is not in fact just a war that already took place, but is a war that will again take place on the timeline? He Who Remains was born in the 31st century, meaning that he does not exist at this point in history. If this variant is born again, he may reign victorious over the coming multiversal war, and come to the same conclusion as his predecessor, that the timeline can only exist one way, lest more variants of Kang come into being, in which case the heroes of the MCU will fight the same multiversal war that the previous incarnations fought all those years ago when He Who Remains first emerged victorious. If this theory is true, then the MCU can only, and will only, ever exist on one continuous time loop, with the death and rebirth of the multiverse serving as a cosmic cycle that is destined to repeat itself for eternity. Is it possible that He Who Remains didn't win the first multiversal war, but in fact won the multiversal war that is about to come, and the same variant who has yet to be born is destined to win yet again? If this is the case, then it may be up to the likes of Doctor Strange and Loki to recognize that the loop exists into infinity, and then Doctor Strange's quest may be finding a way to break free from the infinite cycle. After all, if there's anyone in the MCU who's had experience with time loops, it's Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange may realize that this coming multiversal war ends with the next iteration of He Who Remains weaponizing Alioth the Usurper to annihilate the multiverse and reorganize the timeline once again, eliminating all of the heroes of the MCU as we know them, and allowing their next versions to be reborn and live out the same time loop as before. And it is up to him to prevent this inevitable catastrophe from consuming nearly all life in the multiverse. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think the multiversal war is destined to play out the same way every single time? Or do you think Doctor Strange will find a way to break the cycle if there is one at all? These are just my thoughts on the brand new theory of the time loop, and the fact that He Who Remains wanted Loki and Sylvie to actually kill him in order for the cycle to begin yet again. As always though, I would love to hear theories that you may have about Loki and He Who Remains. And do you think that he could have potentially lied to Loki and Sylvie? Or was he telling the truth? And when he said see you soon, was he referring to various versions of Kang's or another iteration of himself? I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. As always, my friends, hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and have a great day.